Hey, hello. I'm Chloe Sarafika, and this is my presentation on the impact of Asian American culture on gender and sexual identity. So, over the years, Asian Americans have grown into a model minority in our society. Perfect grades throughout schooling, high educational achievement, success in the professional industry, and all with an obedient and hardworking and respectful demeanor. This has been a stereotype that has been circulated, popularized, and has nearly defined what it means to be an Asian American in the US. However, this level of perfection and discipline that is expected of this minority community is not only enforced by the stereotypes and cliches that American society has made known, but by the pressure to fit into this constructed sense of a model minority through internal traditional values and familial expectations they grow up on. But the enforced traditional roles these individuals are expected to adhere to often come at the expense of their own personal identities and futures. One prominent example of this can be seen through the expression of gender and sexual identity of Asian American youth. Growing up in an Asian American community, I've seen similar patterns occur time and time again. My female friends that come from Asian American families are pressured into having children and becoming homemakers, yet many must conceal their relationships from their families because they are forbidden from dating. My own cousin, who is a part of the LGBTQ plus community, is compelled to admit this part of his identity with our Filipino family in fear of judgment or disapproval. And my high school friend was reprimanded and degraded by his parents for having a gender identity and using pronouns that conflicted with his assigned sex. This leads me for my reason for wanting to delve into this topic deeper. My hope is that through the exploration of this topic, one may be able to find the root of this common and problematic trend amongst many Asian American communities. Along with this, identifying the problem at hand may help many that fall into this category come to terms with their true identity despite the community they grew up in telling them otherwise. So even though there has been significant increase in the acceptance and discussion of gender and sexual identity in modern society, many Asian Americans still have difficulties expressing these essential parts of themselves, raising a very important question. How do the traditional cultural expectations many Asian Americans face affect their perception of gender roles and sexual identity? So this is the thesis I'm going to be exploring. In Asian American communities, the emphasis on traditional values regarding gender roles can cause younger generations to endure a complex tension between cultural expectations and their personal gender and sexual identities, resulting in significant challenges when it comes to balancing one's familial expectations with their own individual autonomy. This stress is not just merely rejecting tradition, but instead involves a negotiation of one's identity that mirrors the extensive shifts in gender and sexuality currently happening in modern society, which ultimately shapes how Asian American youth navigate both their cultural heritage and modern social norms in America. So, in order to explore this topic further, we must examine the traditional and cultural values that are so significant in shaping the identity of many Asian Americans. In her article titled Too Maternal and Not Womanly Enough, Asian American Women's Gender, Sung Ha Sun presents an explanation in regards to female gender roles in Asian American communities, specifically how the socialization of mothers in traditional Confucian ideals conflicts and interacts with the socialization of their daughters once they immigrate to America. Confucian values that concern gender constrict women from becoming independent, confining them to roles related to childbearing and domestic life. Because of this, the socialization of the young girls raised with these ideals involves stress on femininity, filial obligations, and interdependence. Even though Asian even though Asian societies are not nearly as traditional as they previously were, these gender roles are still deeply rooted in their societal values. On the other hand, on the other hand, their daughters are raised in America, in which independence and gender equality have more prevalence and significance. The dilemma that comes with this is the fact that because they have been socialized with different values, the daughter may have challenges regarding their identity and gender, resulting in difficulty deviating from the values their mother was raised on at the expense of their independence and aspirations. Along with this, research by Okazaki also demonstrates other cultural values held by Asian Americans that impact their views on sexuality. For instance, a lot of Asian American cultures have conservative views on sexuality while putting heavy emphasis on family honor, modesty, and the preservation of social norms. This creates an environment in which Asian American youth have more difficulty expressing or discussing topics related to sexuality or sexual identity, as these topics are considered taboo. Adding on to this, the assimilation into American society and culture many Asian Americans go through can heavily impact on how they perceive their own sexuality. Since American society has a more liberal view to sexuality, this can create an internal conflict in an Asian American individual, as there is both pressure to conform to the society they live in while also attempting to appease the opposing traditional norms that are also enforced upon them. Okazaki's research implies that this assimilation occurs differently across different Asian American subgroups. For instance, younger generations are more open minded to American sexual norms, while older generations may be more reluctant and hold on to more traditional values. Along with this, Okazaki's research also demonstrated an intersection of Asian cultural values and their impact on the LGBTQ plus Asian Americans. The heteronormativity and the heavy stress on family value and traditional gender roles makes it more difficult for LGBTQ plus to openly express their sexuality in fear of being ostracized by their family members or the possibility of shame that would come with being unable to fulfill the cultural and familial roles so heavily embedded into their culture and family. So, in conclusion, the internal challenge that Asian American youth encounter in terms of the integration and balance of traditional family values with their own developing gender and sexual identities is a very complex and trying process. This negotiation is not as simple as just throwing away these cultural traditions, but rather attempting to find stability between said traditions and one's own individual autonomy. While society shifts in acceptance and discussion, while society shifts in the acceptance and discussion of gender and sexual identity, continuing to reshape social norms, Asian American youth find themselves in a unique position as they undergo a transformation that intertwines cultural preservation with personal expression. This transformation reflects aspects of American society as a whole, in which cultural identities are constantly being shaped and influenced through the never-ending changes in our society's structures and norms. By exploring this topic further, we can better understand how identity is shaped through the socialization and the intersections of different cultures. And here are the references I used throughout my project and presentation. And thank you so much for listening.